Hi, I'm Matthew Smith with Fortify Rights, and I just want to talk briefly about some of our work to prevent the human rights violations that are being perpetrated against the Rohingya in Rakhine State and elsewhere. Um, in 2014, we released our first report called Policies of Persecution, documenting internal state policies restricting freedom of movement, marriage, childbirth, and other aspects of daily life for Rohingya Muslims in Rakhine State. Um, in our estimation, the abuses that those policies gave rise to amount to persecution, which is a crime against humanity under international law. We've also documented human trafficking, in some cases involving government officials. We've documented rape, torture, killings, forced labor at a scale that I've personally not seen elsewhere in Myanmar over the years, even under periods of direct military rule. What we had not done, however, was analyze the documentation we had collected within the context of the Genocide Convention. We had not endeavored to put our information within the genocide framework. Um, for several years, we were asked by activists, fellow activists, journalists, in some cases government officials and international lawyers, whether or not we believed the crime of genocide had been or is being perpetrated in Rakhine State. In turn, we asked the Allard K. Lowenstein Human Rights Clinic at Yale Law School to analyze the human rights situation in Rakhine State within the context of the Genocide Convention. Last year, they produced a report um, that found that the elements of the crime of genocide did appear and do appear to be in place in Rakhine State. They found that it does appear as though the crime of genocide is being perpetrated against Rohingya in Rakhine State. Um, uh, I don't want to recount the details or the finer points of their report. I would fully encourage you to take a look at it, particularly the chapter with the legal findings. I do, however, want to note one noteworthy point in the Hi, Rohingya in Rakhine State. Um, uh, I don't want to recount the details or the finer points of their report. I would fully encourage you to take a look at it, particularly the chapter with the legal findings. I do, however, want to note one noteworthy point in the report on the distinction between intent and motive. Oftentimes, people that we've been interacting with in the diplomatic community, government officials, and others depart from any sort of finding about the crime of genocide with respect to the third requisite element of the crime of genocide, which is the intent to destroy in whole or in part. What we've heard repeatedly from a number of actors is that the people in Rakhine State just want the Muslims gone, is what they tell us. They say they don't want to destroy them in whole or in part, they just don't want them around. And many people now are telling us that they believe at this point in 2016 that ethnic cleansing had taken place, but they don't believe that genocide is taking place. Much of this opinion is not actually rooted in a legal analysis. It is rooted more in an emotional response to a very politically loaded term, which of course is the term genocide. It's important to note, however, that under the law of genocide, there is this distinction between intent and motive. A perpetrator could be motivated by any number of reasons. They could be motivated by a desire to take over land. They could be motivated by a desire, in this case, to drive Muslims out of what the perpetrators in this case regard as their homeland. Um, that motive, if that motive is achieved through acts that are defined as acts of genocide, then those perpetrators may be held responsible for, may be held accountable for the crime of genocide. And my point here is that there is no tension, certainly not under the law, but there is no tension between the phenomenon of ethnic cleansing and the crime of genocide. There is no tension between those terms, and so um, oftentimes some actors are using the phrase ethnic cleansing um, as a substitute because of the politically heavy nature of the term genocide. And I think this is a conversation worth having. I wish I could join you there at Oxford to talk about these very important issues. I commend the organizers of the event. It's very important to have these conversations. I think also it's clear that there were some individuals who were very upset that this conference was taking place. And I think the fact that some people are unsettled by it is indeed an indicator of the importance of it. Last but not least, one of our key recommendations moving forward is for a UN mandated international independent investigation into the situation in Rakhine State. There is persuasive and compelling findings that indicate international investigations create a certain amount of attention on a situation that can actually be preventative. And our ultimate objective at this point in Rakhine State is prevention. We want to prevent these human rights violations from continuing. We want Rohingyas' right to return home to be respected, to return home voluntarily and with dignity. And of course, on the issue of statelessness, this has to be addressed um, with urgency. And this is, of course, one of the roots of the problem in Rakhine State. We will continue our work with all of you and all of our other colleagues in Southeast Asia and in Myanmar. And again, thank you very much. I appreciate it.